Welcome to my first video. This is the VTTDM YouTube channel. I am JW, the VTTDM, and as you can guess, often my topics will have to do with the challenges of being a dungeon master or game master, specifically on VTTs, or the benefits thereof. But not today. I'm going to be discussing something that's universal, which is trying to get player buy-in. Too many times I've heard people where they start an adventure, they start a module, they homebrew a world, and then they get the players in there and the players don't even attempt to follow towards the bad guy, the things that were set up, the world that was created to interact with it. And the DM winds up just frustrated as all heck because there was a story they were hoping to cooperatively tell with the players, and the players didn't even bite. So I find that it's often very important to get player buy-in, the same way that players buy into published adventures. This gets into why I call it the book blurb technique. When you get a published adventure, a lot is already conveyed about what's going to happen just by the title alone. I mean, look at Curse of Strahd. That implies you're going to, or the players are going to, at some point, confront Strahd, right? Empire of the Ghouls by Kobold Press. Well, guess who the bad guys are? Rise of Tiamat, also WotC. Tiamat, it's given away. Dragon of Icespire Peak, even though that's a very sandboxy kit, essentials kit, sandboxy adventure, you still know that you're building up to eventually confront the Dragon of Icespire Peak. So, and these are things that the players know they're getting into. When they start a campaign, start a module, they know the name of the campaign they're getting into. They know what they're playing. They know roughly the direction that they're going to go. And so it gives them this sort of beneficial meta-knowledge, this benevolent meta-knowledge that you don't have to railroad them, but they start to make decisions for their players that kind of help steer them toward the end goal. Even if they do everything else in the world between point A and point Z, points B through Y are just crazy, everything that you can imagine. But the idea is that they also have bought in to get to point Z. So that's not the blurbs though, because you learn even more to get the buy-in. If you just read Curse of Strahd on the front of a D&D book, well, a decade ago, you would have been just like, well, okay, Strahd, Ravenloft, cool. But what sucks you in is you turn the book around and you read the blurb on the back, and there's a whole bunch of other info on there that tells you about the book and tells you about the adventure and some of the things that might happen to you on the adventure, or some of the consequences that might happen if you don't stop the bad guy, or or will you escape the bad place, or you can see where I'm going with this. You get a title and you get this blurb, and it creates buy-in. You can think of the blurb as a player hook, separate from an adventure hook. A player hook is exactly that, like the blurb, something that gets the player to buy in so that when they make their character, when they start playing their character, they're doing it with the goal in mind of getting to the end of whatever the narrative is. Of course, the narrative's going to create itself on its own. You're co-creating the story with your players, but you get them going, we want to tell this story with you. We're not going to block the story. And that avoids railroading. That's the thing. Now, an adventure hook obviously is the first thing that happens when you get the players, when they've created their characters, that then gets them into the first part of the adventure. But you can see how, like, adventure hooks, lots of players used to ignore them, or they'd take them and then abandon the quest, or any number of things like that. Adventure hooks are at the whim of the player's will, really. But a player hook, once you've hooked them, means that the adventure hook will be taken up and the adventure will start, and it'll start going in that way. And it's a beautiful thing. So how do you use the book blurb? Well, obviously, you have a meeting with your players first, and usually session 0 is the best time to do it, or refresher session 0. If you're starting up a campaign, and the characters have already leveled up so much and maybe had a little story arc or mini campaign before it. But you have a meeting, refresher session 0 or a session 0, and you reveal the BBEG unless that's meant to be a secret. So obviously, Curse of Strahd, it's not a secret to the players who Strahd is. To the characters, yes, but not to the players. But that's something you can keep secret, but ideally, you'll pull off the same kind of thing as a lot of the published materials and go ahead and say who the big bad evil guy is. Then you would also reveal a vague version of the BBEG's end goal or its consequences. An example of an end goal, a simple one, is simply take over the world. I want to take over the world. Now, an end goal, of course, also might be meant to be secret. Maybe you're playing a mystery game where somebody, part of the goal is to find out what the plan is, or part of the goal is to find out who done it or whatever. So sometimes you can keep that secret, but if you add it onto or use instead consequences, saying what the end consequences might be, not the goal, but bad things that can happen as a result of the bad guy getting his way. These are things like destabilize a kingdom, starting a bloody war, destroying the world. And you can use these together. If it's not a secret what the end goal is, you can use these together and stack them. So maybe taking over the throne, the end goal, would destabilize the kingdom, a consequence which would then potentially incite a bloody civil war, right? Can you stop this thing? And then you follow up with a call to action, the last element. So you reveal the BBEG, or at least maybe give a hint. You reveal the end goal of the BBEG or a consequence. And then the last thing is a call to action. Can this be stopped? Can you find the MacGuffin? Can you use the MacGuffin to stop the bad guy? Which is, by the way, often used. Think of Dragonlance. It's right there in the title once again. And all of the titles to the modules say dragons something, dragons. So you know who the bad guys are, dragons, and you know there's a dragon lance. It tells you right there, you need to find the dragon lance, that's the MacGuffin, and use it to stop the evil guys, which are the dragons. Of course, we find out later they're specifically the chromatic dragons, but the dragons. And then, once you've given out the call to action, you can always ask your players, even right then, point blank, do you take on the challenge? Are you up for this? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, yes, we are. They'll have gotten sucked in by your description of where this is going, and then they'll go ahead and know that they're aiming in that direction. Now, there's a couple of bonus actions. If the players are creating new characters, have them put something into their backstories that compels their character to accept the hook for the starting quest. I've used this a bunch of times and it works brilliantly. I actually had one person make such an awesome little thing on their backstory that was kind of immediate to the presentation of the adventure hook in the adventure, that it actually led to me having a whole nother player session, game session, before the events of the adventure, the planned events of the adventure took place. Had to plan a whole new thing just because that guy's backstory item was just so darn cool. If you're starting with established adventurers or established characters in an established game, then try and see if you can put hints or clues or things that might be reasons for the different characters to go on the first quest in the sessions leading up to that first session of this campaign. That way, again, the characters will have a compulsion, an in-game compulsion for taking up the banner of going and defeating whatever the big thing is that they have to defeat. Let me see if I've got anything else on my notes here. Of course, I say the benefits again, which I've said already 3 times. It avoids the perceived need to railroad. I know that some people will still perceive the need to railroad, but you don't have to. And it encourages collaborative storytelling within the plot framework. I always like to say, as far as giving people players agency, I don't care where they go. I love to tell a story. I love to have a beginning point and end point, but I absolutely don't care what happens. As long as they're working to stop the bad guy, and what the bad guy was trying to do might change completely based on what the players are doing in the story they're telling. But assuming that they're working to stop a bad guy or stop a bad thing from happening, I don't care what happens between A and B, or A and Z. Anyway, that's me. If you have some comments, please leave them below on what things that you've done to get player buy-in into potential vague stories that you're going to cement finally when the players hit the storytelling with you. Tell your friends I've got a goal to hit 300 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm at 0 right this instant, but hopefully you enjoyed what you saw and plan to come back again. So please share. I will see you again very soon. Thank you.